Hello and welcome to the FPL Lounge, your one stop for Fantasy Premier League related content. Now, today's video is part 2 of the FPL Differential series for the upcoming season. If you have not seen part 1, then please go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. So, first up, we have the reigning, defending Premier League champions Liverpool. Full of stars with a lot of premiumly priced players, and you really don't expect a differential here. But if you look closely, you could discover a gem in Naby Keita. Just 5.5 million price and with less than 1% ownership, he played just 800 minutes last season, scored 2 goals and assisted a further 3. Now, he's a bit of a gamble because last season he wasn't fully fit. He wasn't a nailed on starter either. But then after Project Restart, we saw him start 5 games and give in a goal contribution in 3 of those games. He also scored in the preseason recently. So I think if he's able to carry on that form in the new season, then he would not only nail a starting role, but he could shine as well. Next up, we have Manchester City. Now, after his 6 consecutive 100 plus FPL points, including a 240 points haul in the 2015-16 season, I never expected I would consider him a differential. My pick here is Riyad Mahrez. Only 2.5% ownership, which I can understand to an extent considering City blank in game week 1. But even if they didn't blank, Mahrez isn't a guaranteed starter. But consider this, though not a starter last season, he was City's third highest FPL point scorer, only behind KDB and Sterling. And icing on the cake is that he's 3 million cheaper than both of them. Now I know a couple of days back he was tested positive for COVID, but once back, I think he's worth a consideration. Next on the list are Manchester United. Now this would come as a surprise to many, but the best differential pick I could find from Manu is Marcus Rashford. His low ownership might be partially due to the fact that Manu blank in game week 1. It could also be because he no longer plays up front for the Red Devils. Martial played that role last season. But the biggest advantage here with Rashford is that he is now a midfielder, which means extra points for goals as well as clean sheets. He was also Manu's main goal threat last season, with the highest number of shots as well as the highest number of shots on target for the team. He scored 17 goals and registered a further 8 assists last season, and I expect him to replicate that this term as well. Next on the list are Newcastle. This was a tricky one with a handful of players on my radar. Initially, the choice was Dwight Gale, considering his end of the season form last term. But unfortunately, he got injured. Then I thought about Andy Carroll, considering his preseason performance. But Callum Wilson's arrival has made a big dent on Carroll's position in the starting 11. But the one player I think would profit most from the arrival of Wilson is Miguel Almiron. He is arguably the best player in the midfield. The problem last season Newcastle had was they lacked good finishers up front. But with Wilson's arrival, I expect that to change. And I also expect to see a lot of Almiron's chances getting converted into goals. Next up, we have Sheffield United. Now, my pick here is purely based on pre-season observations. A special mention to Ben Osborne though, but my pick is the veteran Billy Sharp. Now, he played more minutes in pre-season than any other Sheffield United player, during which he scored 3 goals. And we also saw him taking a penalty and scoring it, even when Oliver Norwood was on the pitch. Now, I know he might not be a guaranteed starter, with Sheffield having a lot of other strikers like Liz Mousset, Ollie McBurney, Callum Robinson. But if preseason is an indication, I think Chris Wilder prefers Billy Sharp to all of them, and I also expect him to do well this season. Next up, we have Southampton, one of my favorite teams in terms of attacking potential, and my pick here is James Ward-Prowse. He's ranked 13th on the ICT index for midfielders and 21st overall. Ward-Prowse is also on set pieces for Southampton, a big reason to prefer him over others like Stuart Armstrong and Nathan Redmond. Southampton look a very threatening team based on how they ended last season, and I expect a lot of goals from them this term, with James Ward-Prowse being one of the main contributors. So keep an eye out for him. Next up, we have Tottenham Hotspurs, and I picked Dele Alli here. He is visibly one of Mourinho's favorite players, and rightfully so. He looked in great touch during Spurs' recent friendlies with having scored 1 goal and a further 2 assists in 2 games. Under Mourinho last season, he registered 6 goals and 6 assists. He also created 13 big chances. And with Højbjerg's arrival in the team, I expect Ali to assume a more attacking role this season and also rake up more goals and assists compared to the previous season. Next up, we have West Brom, the last of the promoted sides on this list. And who else to pick other than their talisman, Matheus Pereira? He is a versatile player who can operate either on the wings or as a number 10. Out of the 77 goals that West Brom scored last season, Pereira was involved in 24 of them, with having scored 8 and assisted a further 16. He was also the leading chance creator in the championship last season, with a whopping 116 chances created. I see him as a leading contender in the 6 million price bracket for midfielders. So next on the list we have West Ham, and my pick here is Sebastian Haller. He was one of the most talked about players before the start of last season, but a disappointing first season saw his price fall from 7.5 millions last season to 6.5 millions in this season. Now it's not entirely his fault. West Ham in general were quite awful under Pellegrini, but under David Moyes they look a much better side. Yes, even under Moyes, Haller was replaced by Antonio as the main striker post-project restart. But I feel pre-season games indicate Moyes' faith in Haller, and the striker did repay that faith back with a hat-trick against Ipswich recently. Also with good creativity behind him in the form of Brady Dingana, Jared Bowen and Thomas Soucek, Haller could well score over 15 goals this season. Last but not the least, we have Wolves. And my pick here is Pedro Neto. At 5.5 million, he has an ownership of less than 0.5 percentage. Now I know he didn't play a lot of games last season, but in whatever limited playing time he got, he was quite impressive. Not only in the Premier League, but in the Europa League as well. He scored 3 goals and assisted a further 3 goals last season in only 9 starts. And I expected his minutes to increase this season, especially with Adama Traore possibly leaving the Molino. I'm also expecting Nuno Santos Espirito to try and improve their attack this season because honestly, towards the end of last season, they were almost totally dependent on Jimenez. And Pedro Neto, I think, could be the key to solving that problem this season. Alright, so that's it for today. If you liked the video, please show your support by pressing the like button. You can also share the video with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for all the latest updates. If you have any suggestions, then please do mention in the comments below. Thank you for watching.